Every 13 seconds, there's one divorce in America. This is usually treated with tact and decency, but the more famous you are, the less decency you get, whether you're divorcing a person or a thing. Recently, ESPN's Seth Wickersham had the chance to catch up with Andrew Luck, something very few have done since he walked away from the game. So shout out to him for bringing some added clarity to the situation. The article gives a peek into the mind of Andrew as he struggles with identity following a very public heartbreak. How do you fall out of love with something you love? One of many questions Andrew seems to ponder all the time. The day he got drafted was the happiest of his life, and the honeymoon phase brought him joy and much fulfillment. But just a few years into it and everything changed. The marriage was now taking more joy than it was bringing. For years he couldn't throw a football without pain. He loved the game, but in return, it hurt him over and over. He tried to make it work through rehab and counseling, but it was clear, man, the game didn't love him anymore.
Andrew Luck said bye-bye. Now that news dropped while Luck was still on the sidelines. Boo! As he was walking off the field. And then the waterworks after the game. He shed tears. It's the darkest moment in Indianapolis sports. Blah, 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 blah. Did he deserve that treatment from the Colt fans? And I'm nodding my head yes.
Andrew searched for that feeling he once felt when he played, but the only place he found it was away from the game. He got to the point where he was no longer playing out of love. He was only playing the game out of sheer obligation. But according to psychologist Robert Firestone, the way Andrew was living was no better than death. Acting out of obligation, form, or tradition is deadly, because giving up one's ability to act out of free choice is equivalent to giving up on life itself. I like how Wickersham framed it as a story about love, but even more specific, it's a story about heartbreak. How do you move on after such a public divorce? Well, for one, don't move into the house across the street. Andrew lives 5 minutes from his old team's facility, and now he's going back to Stanford to get his master's degree.
He's back in Stanford
Yeah, I don't
somewhere
know if I
else.
was supposed to publicize that or not.
It's almost like he's trying to retrace all of his old steps, reliving his life through a very different lens. Andrew's basically replaying an old RPG game, but choosing all different answers, trying to force a different ending. He didn't like how his character developed in the first playthrough, so he's trying it again with a new ending in mind. Alright, real quick before we jump in, today's video is sponsored by DraftKings. Football Sundays on their own are amazing, but Football Sundays with DraftKings Sportsbook, that's on a whole nother level. I'm excited once again to be partnering with DraftKings, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. And today I get to share an unbelievable deal for all new customers. Want to win $150 in free bets? The only thing new customers need to do is sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook using my code FlemLo. Bet at least $5 on any pregame moneyline wager, and if your bets hit, the $150 in free bets is all yours. So you heard that right, there's an additional $150 in free bets if your pregame moneyline wager of $5 or more actually hits. Want to up the stakes even more? Try out same game parlays where you can combine multiple bets from one game, like which team will win and by how much, for a shot at even bigger winning. Now, if mobile sports betting ain't available in your state yet, don't even worry. You can still get in on the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and DraftKings Rainmakers. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. And best of all, you can deposit and withdraw cash whenever you want. So if you're like me, if there's a game on, you watching at least one, if not multiple. And sometimes those 3 o'clock games or those primetime games might not be as entertaining as you'd like on their own, but when you add in DraftKings, yeah, it makes it a whole lot more fun. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use promo code FlemLo, bet $5 on any pregame money line bet, and get a free $150 in bets if your bet wins. That's promo code FlemLo, only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official betting partner of the NFL. Shout out to DraftKings once again for sponsoring the video. Without further ado, y'all know what time it is, bros. If it's true that expectation is the thief of all joy, what would that mean for the greatest prospect ever? It's the most expectations that a person can have. So lock your happiness in a safe or prepare to get robbed. As a younger man, finding joy wasn't Andrew's goal. He was more concerned with turning expectations to reality. A genius-level Stanford grad with a degree in architecture, so he approached all his issues like one of his class projects. I was trying to get some added insight into how his mind works, and I came across a blog about how an architect should think. I think he just saw it through an architect's eyes, but the excerpts from the blog describe Andrew pretty well. An architect has a vision that appeared in his mind when he started the project. It's this prediction that motivates the designer to start work and continue the design. This prediction is not the finished product. Instead, it's an abstract reflection of the last image of the work in hand. There's demands to meet, certain limitations, and of course, always problems to solve. As some certain design characters and small details of the result come together, a light shines in the designer's mind. Here it is decided what it should feel like when the work ends. Andrew approached his career with the cold calculation. X work and dedication plus Hall of Fame talent equals Y is you playing. I'm clearly the best to ever do it, even better than Peyton Manning. He reverse engineered what a quarterback was, then rebuilt himself with the image in his head. But his creation had hidden imperfections he didn't account for, unforeseen variables that unbalanced the equation. Check out this excerpt from the ESPN article. He arrived in the NFL in 2012 with little idea that the greatest quarterbacks are often selfish and fragile, controlling and pouty, both the only adult in the room and a grown child. Peyton Manning had run the Colts building for 14 years, expanding the influence and impact of one player, and there was an expectation for Luck to do the same. He was 22. He had no idea how to run a professional team. Early on in his career, Luck chatted with left tackle Anthony Costanzo about the requirements of great quarterbacks. You have to believe that you're God's gift to the world, or else doubt will start to creep in. Luck's most natural version of himself was to be one of the guys, but what worked at Stanford didn't work in the NFL. He felt too much pressure and had to convince himself that he had some level of control over the outcome. So he became someone he didn't want to be, or specifically, he tapped into a part of his personality that he didn't always relish, trying to control every variable extended to dinners out with teammates, where he'd order for everyone without being asked. To play quarterback, you're not allowed to worry about anything except the task at hand, Luck says, and that seeps into other areas of life. Then he admits it's not the healthiest way to live. So one time back when I used to play ball, my coach said something that I thought was really idiotic. He said, "You know something, Fleming? Sometimes you're so smart that it actually makes you dumb." I wrote it off the coach speak, they be saying crazy stuff. But after reading that last part, it finally makes sense. Because I can actually see how Andrew got to this point. I can follow the logic, but it's so smart, it's dumb. As the quarterback, you give marching orders in the huddle, so the natural progression is to order their food. I need to be in charge. I know what's best for the team, but extreme intellect can drown out common sense. Over time, his controlling nature seeped deep into his personal life, and it seems like this is where the real issues started. Andrew met his wife Nicole while he was attending Stanford, where she was also a student at Stanford. She was a high-level gymnast, now a TV producer, so she obviously had her own stuff going on. She's even got her own move named after her at Stanford, but the quarterback in her life implemented a new playbook. He used to literally refer to their life as his design. And I don't think he's trying to take Castano's advice there. I think he just saw it through an architect's eyes, but the lines can get blurred. Through his first few seasons, his design was working well. Dude threw for over 4,000 yards as a rookie. This was despite getting sacked 41 times. He also got the Colts back to the playoffs that year. He threw for 13,000 yards over his first 3 seasons, making the Pro Bowl and the playoffs in all 3 years. Like clockwork, every year they made it around further. We were progressing, said Andrew, but the progress was impeded. The article went on to point out how he got hurt the very next year in 2015, which according to his design and his career trajectory, that was supposed to be their Super Bowl season. But he ended up tearing his labrum in his throwing shoulder. Then he took another hit that caused a lacerated kidney. He had made a pact with himself to never give in to pain, but at some point you gotta say enough is enough. so he missed 9 games with all of those injuries. Then for some reason, he decided to go snowboarding in the offseason. This is a bad miscalculation, and this one decision was the beginning of the end. So he falls off the snowboard onto his hurt shoulder, and this time he separates his AC joint. Technically speaking, he didn't re-injure the labrum, but he further destabilized that whole region of his body. From a figurative standpoint, this is the worst for a quarterback, because you've damaged the connection to your greatest physical gift. Sadly, that connection was never the same after that, because now he felt the deep pain every time he threw the ball.
In 2016, after that season, in which I played through some stuff, I made a vow to myself that I would never do that again. I got in not a good place.
Eventually, it started playing with his mind as he anticipated pain, not receivers coming open. But somehow this GOAT was still doing this in the season where he even cringed watching other guys throw the ball. The control freak in him was embarrassed by it all. And I know that sounds bad, but oh my God, I can relate. He hated letting people see him deal with any kind of pain, as he felt like a failure for the first time in his life. When he finally came clean to the team about the pain, they went through doctor after doctor, but no concrete diagnosis. And the more he felt like he was losing control, the more he kind of lashed out at those closest to him. He was acting out of fear. He was scared. That's normal. But he was still in denial, which made everything worse. I know as men, a lot of times we have a hard time communicating, especially when we're dealing with something painful or depressing. By trying to hold it in when it's clear that something's wrong with you, you actually make yourself a bigger burden for your loved ones. At that point, the tough guy shit gotta go out the window, but that's easier said than done. It's a process, it's hard. As a man, if you don't have some pride, you're no good, but too much pride can make things way harder than they need to be. Andrew was so damn withdrawn, Nicole didn't know what to do. Just sit there and watch the man tear himself apart mentally? She didn't have to deal with the pressure of being a #1 pick, but as an athlete herself, she did have some real insight. Nicole felt uniquely equipped to help. She had been a gymnast in her native Czech Republic, and her childhood was spent in various training facilities across America, sometimes for years. She became so prolific at Stanford that she invented her own move on the uneven bars, called the Pekanova. And before she was 21 years old, she'd broken a shin, an ankle, her back, and torn up her knee, forcing her to reconsider life beyond gymnastics. "I've been injured my whole life," she told him. At first, Andrew wasn't in the mood to hear it. He couldn't hear it. He wasn't sleeping well, he was in pain, he was fighting with Nicole, the team was halfway across the globe without him, and if he stopped to examine his life, the entire world he had constructed might start to unravel, perhaps revealing it to be fatally flawed all along. "I understood myself best as a quarterback," Luck says. "I felt no understanding of the other parts of myself at all."
I right tight, spider left, F motion to gun, crunch left flex, key right, hop to gun, empty left hex, halfback zap to gun, joker left empty, F find, street, 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 drag.
Get him out of the game. Get him out of the game. He's done.
With 5:15 to go in the third quarter, it's the Rams 38, the Colts nothing.
Please let me stay. I gotta go out fighting if I'm gonna do it. I'll be safe, I'll be smart, but I can't go out.
Well, we got a short week.
I understand that. I know. I will not get hit.
At one point in the article, his trainer/therapist asked Andrew a very simple question. He asked him straight up, "Ain't you more than a quarterback?" And the Stanford student with all the answers just came back with, "Huh?" He had aced hella tests at Stanford University, but was now struggling to answer questions on a basic psych eval. It's kind of hard to answer questions about your innermost feelings when outside your profession, you don't know who you are. I done seen plenty ex-athletes struggle for years, like after their playing days trying to find a new identity. And as you age, your identity keeps changing over time. But there's one role for most dudes that offer real clarity.
127, 128, 129, 134, 135, 100.
When you become a dad, it puts things in perspective, but it wouldn't happen for Andrew for another couple years. But he did have a couple breakthroughs in 2017. After 6 weeks in Holland, he fixed his relationship and he finally stopped ordering other people's food at restaurants after his trainer finally called him out about it. Like, "Bro, I love you to death, but you gotta stop doing that. It's weird as hell and I'm a grown ass man." Later that same year, Andrew Andrew had another breakthrough, as renowned trainer Tom House reworked his throwing motion. For months, he worked hard on a slightly altered motion. He wasn't allowed to actually throw anything during that time. They baked the new mechanics into his body for months, going through the motion no ball over and over, and when he finally did throw after all of that prep work, he actually threw without pain for the first time in 2 years. Andrew had made real progress in all areas of his life, and he came back to football in 2018. His shoulder would hold up. It had to be a great feeling. He showed no level of rust. He threw for 4,600 yards with 39 touchdowns. Andrew was rewarded with Comeback Player of the Year. He made it back to the Pro Bowl and back to the playoffs. And get this, he got sacked at the lowest rate of his career. But despite that fact, his body still broke down on him.
Being injured, missing football is no fun, but you do learn a lot about yourself.
Halfway through that season, he messed up his foot and ankle, but played on them all year, including 2 playoff games. If he would have stopped there, he might have been okay, but Andrew kind of pushed his luck and he played at the Pro Bowl. On one hand, I get it. There was a point where you thought you might never play football at a high level again. So you get this opportunity and you want to soak it in, but unfortunately, things just wouldn't work out. While playing in that Pro Bowl game, he re-injured his ankle. And just like his shoulder, there's something about the re-injuries that always did him in.
I made a vow to myself that I would never do that again. I got in not a good place. I felt that the past week and a half, 2 weeks, and that's also a big part of why I'm here right now talking about this.
The article said all the scars from the past showed up as Andrew got back on that hamster wheel of rehab. Once again, the game he loved had turned his back on Andrew, and he silently mourned as he knew the relationship was over. The injury had once again made him question who he was, but this time when he asked, he actually had an answer. He dedicated so much of his life to being a quarterback, and while he did love it at one point, the relationship was toxic. So how do you fall out of love with something you've loved? The answer is pretty simple. Something's got to take its place. Little Lucy Luck would be born in 2019, and she taught Andrew Luck true fulfillment off the field. And he finally realized that what he and Nicole built was better and more unique than the greatest feat of architecture. Before, Andrew had been only a shell of a person, not knowing what he wanted, just following a design. But he finally allowed himself to color outside the lines, outside the emotional constraints he thought he needed to play quarterback. At one point, Andrew's biggest fear was not living up to expectation, but now his greatest fear was getting injured again. Not because of pain itself, but because of who it turned him into. What if he went into a mental tank and withdrew from his daughter? What if he lost that connection to her and to his wife? There's a chance he could become the greatest quarterback ever. But was that really what he wanted? The answer had changed. For him, being a quarterback meant acting like God's gift to the world. But Lucy Luck was God's gift to Andrew and Nicole. So did he want to be the gift or appreciate his own? He's a smart guy, and eventually, he came to the right answer.